So, tell me about your career path and career decisions.
Well, I was called into the ministry back in 1992. And at that point, I knew that I was to go into full-time ministry. And so I just surrendered to the call, and that's what I did. I took some training, and within a year, I found myself hired full-time. And that's been about 24 years ago.
Alrighty. What's your background in terms of education and experience?
Well, I'm a high school graduate. Our denomination required us being called into the ministry to go through the ministerial internship program, a 9-month program that offers training through assignments, reflection papers, reading, sample experiences. And since then, a few years later, I really wanted to further myself, so I enlisted to apply for my master's degree at the Pentecostal Theological Seminary, which is what I'm currently doing now, obtaining my master's.
Alright. What is your definition of leadership?
Well, it can take on many different forms, but to me, it's a couple things. Number one, it's what Christ gave it as an example. He came to serve. I think that's what leadership is. Leadership is really saying, I'm willing to serve someone else. In simpler terms, across the board, leadership really is somebody being willing to make a decision. A decision has to be made. Somebody's got to step up and say, let's do this, or let's go here, let's do that. I think those are qualities of a leader, at least the beginning signs anyway. So it's somebody willing to take charge, make a decision, but at the same time, serve with a servant's heart, like Christ did.
In your opinion, what does a leader do that distinguishes him or her from others?
Well, I think leadership is influence. It's if you're standing in a crowd of people, it doesn't take long to see who the leader is, because that person has taken charge. They've had to step up to get the group going or getting people to follow. So I think that what really distinguishes a leader is his or her ability to be influential, to be able not to lack, but to be able to gather information, gather facts, make a decision, and move forward.
Alrighty. Excuse me. What is your personal philosophy of leadership, and what principles guide you?
Leadership is it's a very high position in the fact that people rely on a leader. And so to me, a leader has to be upstanding, especially a Christian leader. First of all, a Christian leader has to be fully devoted to Christ, and through that be totally submissive to what the Holy Spirit leads a leader to do. Sometimes tough decisions have to be made that will not make everybody happy, but a leader understands he's not called to be a leader to make everybody happy. He's called to make the right decision, knowing that it's going to make some people unhappy, but he sees what's best for the whole, and he makes that decision. I've tried to apply my philosophy of leadership on that vein. A leader has to be able to understand before he makes a decision, but knowing when he makes a decision, he's going to stand by it, and therefore he can do what's in the best interest of the group.
Trying to remember where I was at. Sorry. What skills have you acquired that have been most helpful to you as a leader or in your leadership role?
Well, most of my years of leadership has detailed around being a pastor, a lead pastor of a church, a congregation. And I feel like, I think leaders are readers. Leaders have the ability, or should, obtain books they can better themselves, hone their skills. And I feel like I've learned from other leaders. I've learned from other pastors. You know, if I want my church to get to the next level, I seek out other pastors who are already at that level that I want to be. And so I sit down and ask them questions and ask them, you know, what works for them, what has worked for them, what difficulties have they went through. So I'll know how to deal with them and hopefully make the best decision in that situation. So I think, you know, furthering education, I think obtaining good books that would be able to help. You know, leadership, pastor conferences, they certainly motivate you, they certainly help. I think my best method of learning as a leader has probably been being around other leaders and just talking with them.
How would you characterize your style of leadership?
Well, about 10 years ago, there was an assessment done through the seminary, and it was no real surprise how mine came up. Mine came up as the caring shepherd type leader. Certainly fits my portfolio with my personality and my calling, and I think that's important. So my leadership style is one of the caring, loving shepherd, reaching out to the hurting, taking time for people. That's probably my strong suit.
Who do you consider to be great leaders, and why?
I think the great leaders are the one that remain committed to Christ and committed to the call. Oftentimes we look at leaders that are having congregations of 1,000 people, and we look at them as great leaders, and they are. But there's other pastors that are not pastoring larger congregations. Sometimes they pastor a church of 100, but they've remained faithful and committed to Christ and committed to their call. Sometimes it's the circumstances around them. Sometimes it's the culture that they live in their community that doesn't require their church maybe to grow numerically as the next pastor. So to me, what makes a leader outstanding is his devotion to Christ, his commitment to the Lord, his family, his church. I think those things stand out above anything else.
Who have been influential people for you in terms of leadership?
Well, there's several. Some I've not met face to face. I've seen videos or read their books, or just haven't gotten up close to them. But people like John Maxwell has developed me over the years. Larry Stockstill, a great mentor, pastor. I did get to be under his teaching in a couple sessions. Really enjoyed him. Paul Jones, retired pastor of 42 years, has probably been my greatest mentor. He's taught me a lot about leadership. Gary Macbeth, a long-term pastor out of Findlay, Ohio, as well, has poured into me. There's been several along the way that has helped shape and guide and form, what I feel it has been best for me, at least up to this point.
How did you learn leadership? Is that really something you learn or something that you're born with, kind of thing?
I don't believe leaders are born. I believe leaders are developed. When a person realizes that they may be a leader or called to lead, or when they realize they are an influential person, that's the best time for them to grow, learn. And sometimes those learning experiences are mountains that they have to climb. But I really believe leadership is developed, and I don't believe there's an end of the road until we're through with life. I'm a leader. I've been a leader for 20 some years, and I still feel I'm developing as a leader. I hope I always do.
What are your most important lessons about leadership that you have learned?
Pray and think through every decision. I've not always done that, and I've had to suffer the consequences. So when a leader has to make a decision, some decisions have to be made quickly, but very important decisions should never be forced into making a quick decision. There has to be time to think through. There has to be time to get alone and pray with God, to seek Him, to seek what the Holy Spirit would say, and then time to sit down with people that are experienced to get their input, especially an important decision. I think it's important before any major decision has to be made by any leader to seek out counsel, to pray, and be assured that they're at peace with the decision they're about to make.
What do you think is the most difficult aspect of being a leader, or
Always having to be in charge. Always feeling like every decision is based on what I make as a decision. Everything I say, people are listening. So I have to be careful with my words. I have to be careful in the tone of my words. I have to be careful how I project my words. When I preach, when I counsel, when I'm addressing staff, or when I'm sitting down with a person one-on-one. I don't want to make them feel like you must do what I say, but I want to give you some sound advice that will help you in your walk. So I try to be very careful with that. Haven't always done it, but I think I've learned more over the years how to be more careful and address that better.
Alrighty. What advice would you offer for leaders of the future? As much detail as you can with this. This will help me out a lot too.
Okay. Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah, things change over time. Methods change, culture changes. There's a lot of things that we are involved in life in general that changes. But there's some things remain the same. The message of Christ, the message of the church, that should not change. I do believe that the way we go about sharing that message, the way we do it, it has to vary. It has to appeal to that culture, to that generation. But the biblical truths are foundational. They are good for every generation, every decade, every century. They've proven that. God never changes, but we must be willing to make changes to be more like God, to be more effective in helping others to find who Christ is, and be willing to step out of our traditional thinking sometimes, be willing to step into the unknown, be willing to take a risk. And if it doesn't work, go back to the drawing board and try something else. It's better for a leader to say, I'm glad I tried it, even though it failed, as opposed to, I don't know what that would have been like because I never tried it. So I think it's good for any leader to step out on the limb and take a risk and be willing to adventure, be willing to heed the advice from younger generation, and to be able to come alongside. And I think a leader can learn a lot from that. I know I certainly have, and I continue to learn through that effort.
I saw one. I was thinking of one that wasn't on here, and I can't remember what it is now. Alright. So I'll go to a different one. What are your goals and ambitions for the future?
Oh wow, that's a big question. Well, I want to continue to grow as a leader, that's for sure. But I want to help others. I want to help raise up leaders. One day I'm going to be gone, and to me, a mark of a great leader is not so much what he or she has done while they were in their prime or while they were leading, but it's after they're gone. How many leaders have they raised up? How many people have they mentored? How many people have they trained? Again, Christ is our greatest example of that. He brought under his wing 12 men, called them his disciples. And he put them on a 3.5-year training course. And he said he was going to leave, and he did. And now the rest was up to them to carry the gospel. And here we are 2,000 years later, and the gospel is still being carried. That's what I want to do. I want to pour into younger men and women that they might be able to carry the gospel, continue to be effective, continue to lead.
So for people like, this is not even on here, but like me, who's used to always being in the background, never stepping out because it's just, yeah. What would be your advice to kind of step into that, I guess, comfort zone, so to speak, or leadership kind of level?
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. When I was, before I got into ministry, even in my young adult years, I always felt I was an introverted individual. I didn't have to be in the limelight. I didn't have to be out front. I didn't have to hold a microphone and be the one speaking. I was content just being with the crowd. And all I can say is God had a different plan, because when I knew I was being nudged by the Lord, I knew there was a change taking place. I didn't know what it was exactly. I just knew there was a change taking place. And I found myself more in situations to be influential, to be with a small group of people. I was the one making the decision on where we would go eat after church. Or I would be the one that would say, come on, let's get in my car, I'll drive. What I didn't realize then, but looking back on it now, those were the shaping times that the Lord was nudging me to be a leader. Although that was very small, and many people can do that, but yet, as I look back on it, it was a shaping for me. It was helping me to get out of that introverted way, I guess. Sometimes I still I feel I am introverted. But leaders don't have to be extroverted all the time. It's good when they are. but God also raises up introverted leaders. I think that's probably what I am. But for anybody that's either or, they're very outgoing or they're not very outgoing, God could still use them. God could still raise them up as leaders. And He'll do it in the way that fits them. Fits their personality, fits their makeup.
Yeah. I don't know what I said.